This topic is about momentum, and we're going to start off by looking at an object that is 3 kilogram with a velocity of 7 meters per second. And what we can say is that if we have an object that has got a mass and it is travelling with a certain velocity, then we can actually calculate what we call momentum. And the way we calculate momentum is simply by multiplying out the mass times by the velocity. This is how you actually set the equation out. So momentum is equal to the mass times the velocity, which is equal to 3 kilogram times 7, which is equal to 21 kilogram meters per second. This is basically how we calculate momentum. Now, if you have the larger the mass of the object, then surely what that means is that the momentum will actually be larger. It also takes into account the fact that if the velocity was larger, then the momentum will also be larger. As you can see, we are calculating momentum by times the mass and the velocity. Now we know that velocity is a vector quantity, and therefore we have to basically take into account that momentum is also a vector quantity as well, because it has direction. Because we are saying that momentum is equal to 21 kilogram meters per second, we are going to say that this direction is going to be in the positive direction. Now, I mentioned positive direction now, but if you now have another example where we have, let's say, for example, an object, the same object again. Now, if we have the same object again like this, and we basically have a 3 kilogram object again like this, but this time the object is traveling at the same speed, but it's traveling in the opposite direction, we can actually say that the momentum is equal to, again, the mass times the velocity, but this time the mass is still going to be 3 kilogram, but because the velocity is acting in the opposite direction to the velocity in the first example, we say it's going to be -7 instead, -7 meters per second. And as a result, momentum is then going to be equal to -21 kilograms meters per second. And this is an example of how we actually calculate momentum. The key things to remember is that the equation is equal to momentum, which is equal to mass times velocity. Momentum is a vector quantity because we times the mass with the velocity, and we also know that higher the mass or higher the velocity, therefore momentum will be larger. Next lesson, we will be looking at what happens if we have an object that actually collides into another object, and how that actually affects the momentum, and how that actually affects the velocity of the object.